Hello, my name is Bruce Whitfield, and this is homework 5, and this is the D flip-flop with enable and reset. So I have set up an entity for the D flip-flop with enable and reset, with the inputs being D, clock, enable, and reset, and the outputs being Q and Q bar. Now, the architecture I've set up with a signal that is going to hold the Q's value. And next, here's the process for the D flip-flop with enable and reset. Now, I have set it up with the process having a sensitivity list of the clock, enable, and reset. So we go to the first if statement, and this is just looking to detect a rising edge. And if it does, then temp equals D. And so the value for D gets passed to Q. Now the next if statement is trying to detect the enable. And if it does detect enable, temp equals D, therefore the value gets passed to Q. The next if statement is detecting reset. And if reset is detected, then temp equals 0, which means Q will equal 0. Next, let's look at the test bench. Alright, so my test bench is set up with an entity for the D flip-flop with enable and reset, and the architecture set up with its signals being the inputs and outputs of that D flip-flop with enable and reset. I created a component for the D flip-flop with enable and reset, and right here I've instantiated that component. Alright, and going down, now a D flip-flop responds to the rising edge. So the first value, clock, is 0, and the enable, reset, and D is also 0. And the next one, clock, is 1, and enable, reset, and D are also 0 again. I cycle through all of the possibilities of the 4 inputs, which comes down to 16. Alright, so next, let's look at the waveform. So the waveform that we have here, when D is 0, clock is 0, enable, reset are 0, there is no value for Q and Q bar. It is undefined. When D is 1 and clock is 1, and enable is 0 and reset is 0, Q is 0 and Q bar is 1 because enable isn't enabled. So the value will stay at that. Next, we have D is 0, clock is 0, enable is 1, reset is 0. Q is 0 and Q bar is 1. It has stayed the same. Now, D is 0, clock is 1, enable is 1, reset is 0. Q is 0 and Q bar is 1. Next, we switch, and the only input that is enabled that is 1 is R, which resets the Q and Q bar back to Q being 0, Q bar being 1. Next, you have D is 0, clock is 1, enable is 0, and R is 1. So therefore, the values stay the same for Q and Q bar. Next, you have D is 0, clock is 0, enable is 1, R is 1. Q is 0, and Q bar is 1 still. Next, you have D is 0, clock, enable, and reset are 1, and Q is 0 and Q bar is 1. Next, you have D is 1, clock is 0, E is 0, and R is 0, and Q is 0 and Q bar is 1. If clock and enable were to be 1, the value for D would have been passed to Q, but because it wasn't, it was not. But now you see, clock is set to 1, D is set to 1, and Q is equal to 1, and Q bar is equal to 0. This is the end of my video.